This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Is there any kind of level where like we all are on the same playing field? Is any where we kind of have the same purpose? Because I know we would like to say we're all alike. Does your brain diversity kind of have anything to tag onto that or add onto that, or is that completely false?
Yeah, so we are similar in the fact that we all have brains, and how we differ is actually in how our brains are wired. And I think that's a very good question, Glenn, because I'd like to bring attention and awareness to two main functions of the brain that can really impact how we lead and how we make decisions and how we think. Okay.
Great.
Now, and tell me if you've heard of this. So number one, our brains are wired to protect us, to keep us safe. Have you heard of that one, Glenn?
Yes. I think we can relate that to Maslow's laws, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy, yeah.
Yeah, so we could say yes. I think
Absolutely.
That's probably true, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So our brains are wired to keep us safe, and I'll take you down that road in a bit. But I just want to let you know, and the leaders know, number two is our brains will do anything to be efficient. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to dig a little deeper into both of these elements or characteristics of the brain and see how they impact us. Would that be okay, Glenn?
Yeah, that'd be great, because when you said everybody does look for ways to be efficient, that's a bit of a challenge. So yes, that'd be great.
Okay. So firstly, let's look at how the brain is wired. Okay. Now, we are alive today because the brain has kept our species alive. Okay. In prehistoric ages, when we look at what our ancestors or the challenges they had to face, running away from predators and saber-tooths and striving to have a proper meal without being attacked by animals and things like that. So these are challenges that our brains needed to protect us from in the prehistoric ages. True?
True. Okay, true. Absolutely true. Our
Now,
instincts, yeah.
Our instincts, absolutely, right? Now, in today's world, we do have challenges as well, clearly, but they're not as quote-unquote severe or physically threatening as they were back then, right? So,
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the challenges, for example, it could be when we receive an angry sounding email from our boss. Okay, that's a threat. Or when we have one day, we're dieting and we have one day to indulge, and then that's the day where the food delivery guy brings us the wrong order. Okay, so these are challenges. Or we forget a friend's birthday, or we forget our anniversary and things like that.
Yes.
So these are challenges. It's not being attacked by a saber-tooth. It's not as severe as that, or it could be, but our brain wants to protect us from every threat.
Mm-hmm.
So it cannot tell the difference between the severity of the threat of being attacked by a predator versus versus getting an email from an angry boss. It treats all threats the same.
Okay.
So what the brain does is it tries to consistently and constantly protect us. Now, how it protects us is, can I get a little bit scientific here, Glenn?
Yes, please. Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So we have a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, the prefrontal cortex is basically responsible for our logical thinking. So when we're strategizing, when we're planning, when we want to exercise willpower, we use that part of the brain. Now, when the brain detects that we're under threat, it shuts off the prefrontal cortex. Okay?
Okay.
Because the prefrontal... Yeah, do you want to ask me something?
No, that's more of a light going off in my head, because it shuts that down. and it draws you back to your instinctive fight or flight.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it does.
Okay.
And so that instinct that we talk about comes from another part of the brain called the amygdala.
Yes. Okay.
The amygdala is responsible for survival instincts and, as you said, fight or flight. All
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So now the prefrontal cortex has gone offline, and the amygdala now has taken over and is piloting how we respond to the threat that's in front of us.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So that's one part of it. I'm just going to pause there for a bit because I want to introduce the next part of the brain characteristic, and then we're going to put them all together.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. So the brain is also efficient in the sense that it does not want to be. It doesn't want to use too much of its energy or its space to process information. Okay, so as much as it can,
Okay.
what the brain is going to do is it is going to rely on automated systems within itself so that it doesn't have to consciously respond. Because conscious responding, which means we invoke the prefrontal cortex, takes a lot of brain energy. It just makes the brain tired, and the brain doesn't like that. It just wants to be as efficient as it can.
Okay, so that explains something there, because what we're saying with that, coach me on this and correct me if I'm wrong here, it feels like we're saying, okay, when your prefrontal cortex is doing all this work to figure out everything, and even so much as to say, okay, I'm going to diet properly, or a lot of willpower, I'm going to express a lot of willpower. It takes a lot of energy, and it burns off pretty quick. And then the shortcut to be efficient is just probably more than likely to just say no or just not do it.
Yes.
So if you're, as a leader, always telling your team to do this, to this, to this, to this, and it's taking a lot of energy, it's not very long before they just will automatically stop thinking and say no.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, that's one part of it, and I'll tell you how more of how this connects to leadership in a bit.
Yes.
So the brain literally has to process 11 million bits of information coming in from our senses every second. It's not every day, it's every second.
Second, yes.
11 million bits of information. That's intense and that's crazy, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
So what the brain does is, as I said, it relies a lot on automation. So automation basically means the brain will go into memory or look at your past experience, and it's going to see how you responded to this in the past, and it's going to copy and paste that response whenever a same trigger or a same challenge or something threatening comes to you. It's going to copy and paste that response so that it doesn't have to think. Okay?
Okay. Because that not thinking is like pretty much putting things on, like, well, how your heart works and how your lungs work.
Absolutely.
Your brain doesn't think about that. It's scripted in there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you really hit something there, because all these automations happen in the background and it happens below our levels of consciousness. So it's actually 99% of our sensory input, right? What comes in through our senses gets processed in the brain in a non-conscious manner. Okay, and these non-conscious systems, what they do is they analyze information and they automate responses. And that's the danger, because that means in our brain's attempt to keep us safe and in our brain's attempt to be super efficient, what it does is it kind of helps us by sabotaging us. So, for example, I'll just take the example of a diet that you mentioned earlier. You're on a diet and you decide that you are going to go off donuts forever. Okay? Well, not forever. Yeah, forever is not.
Forever. Okay, yeah.
Not forever.
Yeah.
Chocolate sprinkles.
You gotta have those.
So Now, the next time you're in front of a bakery or a donut store, whatever, the smell of the donuts are enough to entice you. Now, automatically, because you've done this in the past, when you smelled donuts, you saw it, you take it, you bite into it. That's what you've done. The brain remembers this. Now, what the brain does again is it feels a threat, because it feels that you're trying to stop yourself from eating the donut, and for it, that's a threat. And so what it does is it just goes into its non-conscious automated processing, and it says, what did she do before when she saw donuts? Eat it. So it says she's going to eat it again. So it is very easy for us. The effortless way is to pick that donut up and put it into your mouth. The willpower, which comes from the prefrontal cortex, requires us to put in a little bit more effort, a little bit more energy and consciousness, and being deliberate by saying, I see it, I know what I did before, and I'm not going to do that again now. So that is basically the fight between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala that's happening in your brain. That's what results.
Okay. So when a leader is dealing with somebody on their team that has done it this way before, and it's been safe for them to do it this way before, they should kind of pick up on the fact that it's been safe before, so they're going to repeat it. Even though that may not be behavior that they want them to demonstrate. It's safe for me to take an extra 2 hours to turn this report in, so it's perfect. So they repeat that every week.
So, okay, that's a good example, right? Now, let's take an example of someone who comes late every Monday morning to work. Okay. As a leader, you see that, you recognize that, and at first you let it go, but then you realize it's becoming a pattern, right? Now, as a leader, because of how our brains are wired, because when our brains go to non-conscious processing, we tend to have a lot of bias, right? So, for example, we've experienced this in the past. In our past workplace, we've dealt with someone who comes late on Monday mornings, and we know that he did it because he just hates Monday morning meetings. Okay? Now, what the brain does is, as the leader, the leader's brain, it will pick up what it has done in the past. It says, oh, if I see this person, or if I see a person coming late on Monday mornings, I equate it to him not wanting to be in Monday morning meetings. So that's a bias that has been created because the brain latches on to how it used to think in the past.
Okay.
All right.
So that should pick up a pretty big light for everybody, because we all operate on our biases, and our biases sound like that's the shortcut we're taking. That's the efficiency that we're looking for. We take our biases and say, okay, I know this to be the fact, even though it may not be true, and that becomes our efficiency. So go ahead. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that you don't pick up on your biases, but your biases kind of control you, because you're doing this, your brain is doing this non-consciously, right? So how you can be conscious about this as a leader is, when you see someone doing this, you, instead of relying on bias and instead of relying on personal experience in the past, you can stop assumptions, and you can say, okay, this is a new person. He may be doing this for an entirely different reason, and the only way I'm going to know is through communications with him. So this is you as a leader deliberately saying, brain, thank you for copying and pasting all these biases and helping me react the same way I've reacted before, but I'm in charge and I've got this, and I'm going to communicate with this team member of mine to find out why he's really coming late on Monday mornings, versus making an assumption that he hates coming to Monday morning meetings.
Thank you for watching this presentation from Touchstone Publishers. Please subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new episodes are published.